read two pieces tonight. One from my book, Soutine, which Robert mentioned. Soutine is a book-length poem. It's a verse biography of the painter Clein Soutine. It's written in terza rima, which is the form Dante used in Divine Comedy. And it's interspersed with memoir. Not a lot of people know Clein Soutine, despite the fact that he's a very good painter. So I'm going to read one of the memoir bits. Doesn't need as much background. I'll tell you this, the memoir has to do with my discovery of Soutine, my discovery of painting, teaching myself to paint, and interacting with painters in this region. Interesting, at least to me, is that one of them, Andrei Tamarchenko, ran a school in this room and the room next door. This used to be the Nandy Gallery. It was a school for kids during the day, adults at night. Andrei and his friends, including me, would paint here. It's a beautiful art experience here. I'm glad to see that it's still an art experience. So I'm going to read one of the memoir bits. At this point, I've lost a job, gotten a new job. In the meantime, taught myself to paint, and one of the adventures in doing that was going to the Metropolitan Museum of Art after like 3 weeks of working in my attic and making a copy of a Pizarro, for which I should probably still be in jail. Also, I referenced my first discovery of a Soutine, which is a landscape at the MoMA, which I'm sure is in the attic now, since the renovation. This is book 2, chapter 4. The chapter is called La Cité Vulgaire in Paris, but the first part, part 1, takes place much closer to New York City. 888 7th Avenue, New York. The famous opera man, a semi-homeless fixture, lifts his can and sets to work another day delivering his hopeless arias. Removed across the avenue by uniforms at Carnegie Hall, the heartless monsters, he resumes his ballyhoo and de profundis on a sidewalk square on 57th, just below the studio of Ernest Critchlow on the second floor of the Art Students League of New York. Critchlow taught an open session there on Thursday nights in '93. By luck, I'd landed at an office right across the street, above the Brooklyn Diner. What the fuck, I thought, the lead. What better way to meet the likes of Critchlow, Romare Bearden's partner at the Cinque Gallery? And what could beat 3-hour sessions with the nude Nirvana every Thursday night? I cut across the traffic, snarled on 57th on a blood quest, with a bag of oil tubes tossed and jostling on my back. It was a chance to fail, on par with painting in that most auspicious gallery uptown. My pants were caked with color. On the night I met a realist from the Harlem Renaissance. Another wild man, Critchlow laughed. He'd vet my canvas, shake his head and say, "All right, keep moving with the figure while it's wet." When he retired, I switched to Wednesday night, Harari's class upstairs, Hananiah. He was full of love. In Europe, at the height of things, at home, a socialist pariah, the blacklist, and the whole shebang, this gentleman was in his 80s, an American who figured in the school of Paris. Judgmental? He was not, but all encouragement. "I love this color," he would say, and bend to see it closer in the battlement of oil across my slab. "Spare no expense. Your métier's impasto." There I spent my Wednesday nights, an intense experience. The weary model, having posed all day, conveyed a softness. I would often sense her weight and form through color, in the way that greens and violets would develop in the pasty flesh tone I naively splay across my gessoed canvas, and begin to understand what Critchlow told me. Work it wet and keep up with the drama in the pose. Harari smiled. "I see a Turk, an odalisque. Matisse would see the same." The man was going blind. Sometimes he'd lurk behind a student quietly, then, "What's your name? You're Sally, right?" "Robert." "Yes, of course." But he could see the paintings. When he came to mine, I'd watch his eyes. There is a source of clarity in art and in the process of creating, and Harari had a vast resource of images within. He could assess a canvas with an acumen and skill that cut through cataracts. I'll tell you this, you're learning how to work with white. It's still the toughest color on my palette. Ah, that's right, it's not a color. He would kill with his derisive jabs at dilettante opinions. I looked through catalogs and found examples of his early work. His avant-garde Parisian pictures brought to mind Georges Braque. I came across a painting titled Soutine's Studio. Soutine. Remind me where I heard that name. In fact, the wild landscape that unsettled me at MoMA was the start of something huge. Beguiled, I studied Soutine on the train, at home, at work. It bordered on obsession. So I asked about it. That one, my oh my, it brings back memories. Did you not know I took his studio in Cannes? He left a week or two before I got there, though. We never met. I have to say, I loved Harari all the more for this. "Where's yours?" He'd lean into my painting. "It's improved. Come back next week and give it 3 more hours. And in the morning, there'd be Opera Man. And I'd think, you and me, pal, amateurs." All right, I'm going to read one more poem. This is from the upcoming chapbook. It's kind of a scrapbook. It's coming out in January, which is kind of unfortunate. I wanted it out this year because it is a tribute to the Rolling Stones on their 50th anniversary. The book is called The Stones, Jones, Canzones. That's Jones as in addiction, and the obvious reference to the dead guitar player. And canzone is a 13th century poetic form, again, coincidentally, developed by Dante, resurrected in the 19th century by some Italian guys, and by Auden in the 20th century. And there are some people that write formal poetry that kick it around to this day. I'm going to read one of the 5 canzones in this chapbook. This one's about sympathy for the devil. And you're probably familiar with the song Sympathy for the Devil. You may also be familiar with the film, which was made by the French filmmaker Jean-Luc Godard. Fascinating film in that he filmed him in the studio creating the song, watching all the changes, and they went through vast changes recording the song. You're also, coincidentally, watching Brian Jones die. It's about that point in his career. He's a mess. It's also during the period when Robert Kennedy, the weeks they were doing this, the Robert Kennedy assassination happened, causing them to have to make the word Kennedy plural in the famous line, "I shouted out who killed the Kennedys. After all, it was you and me." He intersperses things as well. He intersperses these vignettes of social commentary that go very heavy on black separatism. And ham-handed just doesn't do it, any justice. This movie is fascinating. Fascinating. Have people seen this movie?
It's called Sympathy for the Devil?
Sympathy for the Devil by Jean-Luc Godard. It's not one of his big ones. It's a must-see. Okay, here's an actual poem, and then we'll palaver. Stones, Jones, canzone. Wait a minute, I'm going to give you a little bit more palaver, just a little bit. The canzone is a repeating form. If you hate sestinas, you're going to love the canzone because there are fewer repeating words and more lines. Do the math. Stones, Jones, canzone number 3. The Stones in Sympathy for the Devil. Jesus, will you look at Brian Jones, compartmentalized, behind a wall of sound attenuation. Brian Jones, whose many Joneses share an adjunct Jones, the baggage of charisma. waste of talent, fame, a waste of cash and time, a Jones by any other name, etc. Jones to end all Joneses. Here's a yellow card from Keith. 3 chords, mate, it isn't hard. Just look at Charlie. Charlie, look at Jones. We'll keep him in the rhythm section. Bill, let's get you some maracas. Keep smiling, Bill. And there are other players on the bill, and blokes with cameras and microphones on booms. And now, an Afro-Marxist Bill of Rights is read. Who's picking up the bill for this production? Sitting on a wall of junkyard cars beside the Thames, like Bill upon a Fender Twin, but unlike Bill in many ways, a panther with a talent for the imitative, focuses his talent on intimidation. More austere than Bill on bass, the brother plays a ghetto bard. He's Eldridge Cleaver in a fascist leotard. Cut back to studio. Jean-Luc Godard is stringing a guitar, ignoring Bill, and focusing on Keith and Mick. Godard, that bastion of the Nouvelle Vague. Godard, purveyor of La Bande Apart, shoots Jones from overhead, behind, with no regard for Brian's legacy. Le Grand Bâtard. Meanwhile, Mick evolves a funky caterwaul, and Keith unwinds a honky wall of sound effect, quite lost upon Godard, who's come to film the revolution. Talent is absurd. Go find a formula for talent. Now, at Camden Quayside, dig the talent show. An open soapbox for Godard, who speaks in tongues, as the graffiti talent Eve Democracy decants her talent on the walls, and bourgeois Bentleys build the stones for damages. And as for talent, what the hell more motherfucking talent could you ask for than the ersatz Leroy Jones reciting as his crew dispatches Jones of Arc face down in nightgowns? You want talent? There's some. Bleeding on the pavement, on the wall. Democracy scrawls up against the wall. Now, strumming chords behind a rubber wall, the multi-instrumental waste of talent. Godard is painting something on the wall. Mr. President, tear down this wall. A line ironically post-avant-garde and premature. It's retrograde. Now all the pieces fall together. Wall-to-wall percussive coding. Charlie nodding, Bill communicating. Jagger quacks his bill and shakes a feather. Keith holds up the wall and peels a classic riff as Brian Jones keeps strumming 1-4-5. The dying Jones, a perfect foil to Dylan's Monsieur Jones, Jean-Luc Godard, who's run into a wall of turgid ideologies, a talent, some would say. He turns another card. Another Kennedy is added to the bill. Thank you.